He was 4 feet 10 inches of undeniable singularity, the man who had been the most terrible penguin villain ever to touch the screen. A small ball of anger who stepped into a room and somehow turned it into a glorious explosion of ruin. Hollywood, which loves to place everything in nice little boxes, never quite figured him out. But Danny DeVito knew with rock-solid certainty who he was. The singular, fundamental element that had supported his entire, astounding life was never fully captured by the unrelenting stare of the cameras, never completely transmitted by the glossy posters or the acknowledged award nominations. His profession wasn't about the renowned pictures or the starry celebrity. She was a Brooklyn woman who walked into a small, unassuming theater on a clear January night in 1971, her original purpose long forgotten when her eyes met the man on stage. No reason for the world to pay attention, but she chose him. Now, at the age of 81, Danny DeVito has declared openly what has quietly informed his existence for decades. She was and is the solitary love of his life. And the complex tangle of his journey to this potent statement, through a childhood that should have irretrievably ruined him, a Hollywood machine that constantly tried to reshape him into something more palatable, and a marriage that refused to die even as its very substance was forever altered, is a story so compelling that it demands that one fundamentally reconsider the true nature and abiding shapes of love itself. Danny DeVito was born November 17, 1944, in the beach hamlet of Neptune, New Jersey. From the very beginning, there was a modest but persistent suggestion that Danny was not as expected. His mother, Julia, was around 40 years old and had previously brought up several children when he was born. Years later, in a raw and almost cruel honesty, she would declare, "I didn't want him, but I'm so proud of him." 4 words of rejection, followed by 6 words of joy, were a contradiction a little child had to understand and reconcile. And Danny carried these feelings with him throughout his life with a resiliency that was to become the hallmark of his character. That early feeling of being an afterthought, of feeling undesired in the very place he was meant to matter most, never entirely went away. It was a faint undercurrent, a silent motivator he fought against, a raw force he learned to control. But its presence was an indelible part of his emotional surroundings. His father was a gentleman, by day a respected member of the town who ran a sweets shop in Asbury Park. But when it got dark and the drinking began, there was a difference in the home. Like many youngsters in homes touched by such complexities, young Danny became intensely sensitive to these small but dramatic variations in atmosphere. He learned to read the unspoken indications, the swings in mood, with an instinctive, almost primeval awareness. He ran for refuge sometimes, hiding in the quiet depths of closets. A little boy, looking for shelter from an unexpected storm. Sometimes, the need to escape was so overwhelming, he would run to the relative safety of neighbors' houses. A quiet scream for a moment's peace. Police records show at least 17 calls to his home between 1950 and 1955, offering a vivid and distressing picture of the continuous volatility that had shadowed his youth. In addition to the evident challenges of his home life, Danny also carried a relatively invisible burden, a physical reality that would stain his existence in fundamental ways. He was born with Fairbanks disease, a rare genetic illness that mostly impacts the development of the bones, which accounts for his final height of 4 feet 10 inches. His stature was spectacular, but almost lost in the more subtle and deeper influence of the disease. Fairbanks suffered from a continual disease of the joints, his knees, his hips, his spine, chronic, excruciating agony. By the time he was 30, the daily anguish had ceased to be an annoyance and had become a constant companion. A torment he would later rate between 6 and 8 on a 10-point scale. It was a private fight, fought in secret, because Hollywood, in its never-ending drive for an idealized image, had a clear message. Vulnerability was not marketable, so he carried his heartache silently, a testament to his inner strength. And he moved on, refusing to let a secret illness dictate his outward passion. Eventually, his travels brought him to New York, city of dreams and hard reality, where he rented a squalid apartment costing $75 a month with another would-be actor, Michael Douglas. As it turned out, Douglas had a very major secret on the side that he kept under wraps. His father was the renowned Kirk Douglas, who someday would be a huge, though unrecognized, help. During those lean years, they often lived on tinned beans, the food of struggling artists. They pooled their little resources, dividing their last $27 to purchase for headshots, which they personally delivered throughout the sprawling metropolis, a testament to their extreme determination. Douglas got various gigs, no doubt helped by his pedigree. Danny, however, would not budge. He parked cars for a living, not the stages he wished for. He stopped even in the window of a clothes shop, a living, mindless mannequin, his stillness belied by the burning ambition inside. There was a time, a terrible chapter, when his old Volkswagen Beetle was his home, and the local YMCA was his sole place to shower. Another feature of his concealed power was that he had passionately guarded this story, this intensely private struggle. A story that was a monument to his steadfast commitment to his vocation. For years. And Hollywood kept coming back to him, as usual, and telling him he had to fit the pattern. Change. Be something more palatable to mass viewers. One studio saw promise in him, but didn't like his funny appearance. They offered him an incredible sum of money, around $1 million today, if he would agree to surgery to transform his face. It was an offer that could have been a life-changing temptation for a struggling actor. A shortcut to acceptance. But Danny DeVito would not. In almost rebellious determination, he symbolically rejected the industry's demands by famously burning the contract in a beach bonfire. His response to the casting director, who insisted on the procedure, was a bold statement of self-value that would resonate through his career. "I'd rather be a first-rate me than a second-rate you." He meant it, every syllable, a testament to integrity forged in the crucible of early rejection and physical pain. DeVito was 26 years old in 1970. He had a stack of rejections he could hardly keep track of, each one a little bruise to his hopes. His body was hurting in ways he couldn't easily explain to other people, a constant war inside himself. He had endured a childhood that would have broken most of the others before they had even had a chance to start. And yet, he was still standing, still fighting, still seeking his dream. But still, for all his tenacity, for all his resilience, he'd never really been seen by another person. Not in that profound, soul-deep way that penetrated into the very heart of a person's being. But all that was to change, radically and forever, on January 17th, 1970. It was a one-night-only gig, an off-Broadway play called The Shrinking Bride. It was not a big show, not a spectacular occurrence that finds its way into the history books of theater. It was a modest show, in a modest place in the bustling heart of New York City. Rhea Perlman, 22, had only gone that night to see a friend in the cast. That was the only reason she had come. Born and raised in the working-class neighborhood of Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, she was the daughter of a Polish immigrant who had made his way in the toy business. Rhea was also an art lover, graduating from Hunter College in 1968, where she studied acting. Meanwhile, she supported herself by waitressing at the swanky Rainbow Room at Rockefeller Center, and continually auditioned for any part she could get. She possessed a sharp wit, a natural sense of humor, and a vibrant personality that could fill a room without raising her voice. She sat down, excited to see her friend perform. Then she saw him. There was a man on that stage, not tall, stocky, not the kind of leading man type Hollywood generally preferred. And he had the whole room, every eye, every scrap of attention, in a fascination you could not deny. There was something in the way he moved, his tiny body, and the way he moved with a determined grace. The timing of his delivery of each syllable, the way he seemed to exist in a gravitational field all his own. It was this presence that made Rhea Perlman forget her errand altogether. The guy she came there to support had gone out of her mind, replaced by an instant and deep fixation with the man on stage. The curtain fell. The applause ceased. The first question she asked those around her was spontaneous, straightforward, and direct. Was he with anybody? The reaction was no. She did not wait for an introduction, did not stand on ceremony. Years later she would declare, "I had to meet him right away," and again chuckle at the memories. "I went all in on him." They went to supper after the play, and what began as an introduction became hours of conversation, a profound, resonating connection between them. This woman from Brooklyn sat opposite from Danny DeVito, who for most of the last decade had been told in so many words that he was wrong. Wrong height, wrong look, wrong type. And yet, with refreshing clarity, she felt he was the most engaging person she had ever seen on a stage. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, just 22 minutes after meeting her, that she was the woman he was intended to spend his life with, he later admitted. Not a prospect, not a possible partner, but the woman herself. There was an instant, deep, undeniable connection. 2 weeks later, Rhea moved into his Manhattan apartment. 2 weeks, not a month, not a gradual and deliberate wooing, but a swift and resolute advance born of mutual recognition. They were two people from the same kind of worlds, from working-class backgrounds, with big goals and the peculiar, hard-won tenacity that comes from never having anything handed to you. They glanced at each other, and saw something they didn't realize they were looking for. Something missing that clicked into place. They shared 11 years in all before they finally married. Not that there was ever any doubt about their dedication to each other, but neither of them felt the need for a piece of paper to validate the bond they already shared. Their love was a law of life, not a formality of law. That hard-earned friendship with Michael Douglas in those lean, tough years would one day pay him with the all-important break on which the remainder of his career would be based. By 1975, Douglas had moved into producing and was working on the film version of Ken Kesey's classic novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, to be directed by the acclaimed Milos Forman. Douglas, who remembered the bright clarity of his former roommate, asked for Danny by name. At first, Forman resisted this, and the studio, always aware of how marketable anything is, wanted someone bigger. But Douglas, convinced in his own mind, stood firm, demanding DeVito. Danny ended up portraying Martini, a mental patient, a role he had happened to perform years previously in a theater version of the same story. He was on screen for a short period, just 5 minutes and 52 seconds. But those moments made their mark, a performance that is still spoken about nearly 50 years later. The film received 5 major Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Danny had not been directly nominated, but at last, inevitably, he had arrived on the map of Hollywood. Then, in 1978, Danny DeVito did the one thing everyone in Hollywood, even his own agency, said was career suicide. He turned down 3 movie roles, big breaks in a notoriously ruthless business, to audition for a TV series called Taxi. His agency had expressly forbidden it, a demotion, a bet not worth taking. But Danny got the same instinctive gut feeling of confidence that he had when he first saw Rhea. He had read the script and knew, without anybody else telling him, this was his next move. That figure was Louis De Palma, the irritable, spiteful, and thoroughly unpleasant dispatcher of taxis. He walked into that audition room and killed them with a 7-minute monologue. ABC executives, however, were said to be concerned about his height, and if that would play well with a large television audience. In fact, one of the show's creators, James L. Brooks, was so sure of DeVito's genius that he threatened to quit if DeVito wasn't cast. They gave way with such assurance. Danny signed the contract without negotiating, even though he was paid 40% less than the other important performers. He didn't care much. He knew he had found his vocation. In season 2 of Taxi, there was a nice twist. Rhea Perlman joined the cast as Zena Sherman, Louis De Palma's girlfriend on the program. Interestingly, the producers were unaware that Danny and Rhea had lived together for years. Their relationship offset was a closely guarded secret from the professional world. They were shocked by the undeniable, remarkable chemistry between the 2 actors. They attributed it solely to their professionalism. And that was really great acting, a credit to the skills of everybody. But it was also, in truth, the simple exchange of 2 people who knew each other with an intimacy and understanding that few human beings ever really achieve. 11 years they had been sharing life, love, and ambition. And in January 1982, they married quietly. There was no major production, no public demonstration. It was a private confession of what had long been known. That same year, Rhea scored her signature role as Carla Tortelli on the hit sitcom Cheers. The quick-witted, sharp-tongued barmaid who made her one of the most beloved actors on American television. Her excellent performance won her 4 Emmys. Danny had spoken of her success with a genuine satisfaction, a subdued thrill that seemed to transcend any accolade he had ever achieved himself. An unmistakable proof of the mutual respect and admiration that had characterized their relationship. It was 1983, still shooting Taxi, and Danny and Rhea began another big project, working long nights and weekends, quietly starting Jersey Films. During the next 2 decades, the production company would become one of the most powerful and significant independent forces in American cinema. Under their leadership, Jersey Films has produced an incredible list of critically acclaimed and culturally important films, including Quentin Tarantino's game-changing Pulp Fiction, the emotional legal drama Erin Brockovich, Steven Soderbergh's stylish Out of Sight, Zach Braff's heartfelt Garden State, and more. The Pulp Fiction story itself is a telling look into their operational philosophy. Quentin Tarantino, then an up-and-coming talent, had been turned down by several other studios, his singular vision deemed too risky. But Danny and his colleagues at Jersey Films noticed the untutored genius. They kept the project alive, giving Tarantino's firm the much-needed cash, office space, and, most critically, the freedom to make his movie on a meager $8 million budget. Tarantino claimed it would look like a $25 million movie and famously delivered on his promise. They were also, during this time of great career advancement and creative activity, working hard to raise 3 kids: Lucy, 1983, Grace, 1985, and Jacob, 1987. In spite of their busy occupations, they observed a guideline for decades. No more than 2 weeks would go by without working on something creative together. This was not just playing at husband and wife. This was the active creation of something unceasingly, a shared creative enterprise that weaved itself into their daily life. The best, brightest, and most moving example of this uncommon cooperation was the 1996 movie Matilda. The film was directed by Danny, who played the incredibly terrible Mr. Wormwood himself, and cast Rhea as his equally dreadful wife on screen. Their own kids made little charming appearances in the film too. But what no one saw, what was completely off camera, was the quiet, deep compassion that was going on behind the scenes. And the teenage actress who portrayed Matilda, Mara Wilson, was dealing with her mother's battle with illness during filming. Silently, her sanctuary, without expectation of praise or display of thankfulness, carrying her with a care and protectiveness usually reserved for one's own kin. Danny and Rhea. Knowing time was short, Danny arranged for a near-final cut of the movie to be screened at the hospital before production was even ended, so that Mara's mother could see her daughter's work before she died. Years later, reflecting on the hard time, Mara Wilson said they felt like her favorite aunt and uncle, and had made something absolutely horrible a little bit more tolerable in a way she would never forget. This was the true man, the man of posters and nomination for awards, who could never be truly captured. The actor who brought monsters and villains so convincingly to life on screen was in those quiet, uncelebrated corners of his life, reliably one of the good guys. Then, in October 2012, after 30 years of marriage and more than 40 years together, Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman announced their separation. The news traveled throughout the world with genuine agony and shock, particularly in Hollywood, where relationships looked as ephemeral as a newspaper cycle. To millions of ordinary people, Danny and Rhea had been something else, something that lasted. It was not a love story, staged, carefully staged for the public. They were two real individuals with real, grounded origins who had made a real life together. The sincerity of their connection was plain to see. To many, it felt like something precious had been taken away. A symbol of long-time love shattered suddenly. Years later, Rhea spoke candidly about the divorce on Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast, Wiser Than Me, in a way that was forthright and very personal, yet respectful of the details. "I'm not going to lie. It was really hard at first," she said. "There were a lot of reasons that we parted," she added. "We were both highly ambitious and often immersed with our work. He enjoys doing his work. I like to work," she stated, speaking of the hardships a workaholic might bring to a relationship. She made clear some things were theirs alone, not for the public sphere. But here's the big thing that didn't happen. They didn't break up. They love each other, always have and always will, a source close to them told People magazine in March 2013, barely 5 months after the disclosure, a statement that resonated with its profound simplicity. They made up. They tried again, going through a period of intense effort, attending 38 treatment sessions, according to some reports. He even rented out the very restaurant they had gone on one of their first dates, a gesture that spoke volumes of his continued dedication and desire to reignite and celebrate their shared past. They spent 4 more years together, learning the ropes of their restored romance. But life, with its unpredictable currents, reunited them in 2017 and then separated them again. It's incredible that they never divorced. When the New York Post asked Rhea directly in 2018 why they'd never divorced properly, her response was the calm certainty of someone far beyond the point of needing to explain or justify. "We've been together a long time, so there's a lot of love and history," she remarked. "We agree on enough things, so why would we ruin that with the yucky things that come with a divorce?" It was a practical, yet very much loving comment that challenged the traditional idea of a relationship. Their ongoing contact assumed a series of deeply personal and revealing forms. Danny acquired a house less than a mile from Rhea's. They used to talk every day. Every day there was a constant thread of communication via their separate lives. They would meet often at the same restaurant, the same table, a ritual that confirmed their friendship would survive. In a piece of present-day comedy, their son jokingly quipped that they even had a Netflix account in common and would reach out to each other while watching the same shows from their different houses. When Danny appeared with Fox News Digital in 2024 and the subject of Rhea came up, he didn't hesitate. "We are doing great," he remarked. "We see each other all the time. Lucy's birthday was yesterday. We were all together at the party. We're a close family." Then he added the part that, one suspects, said more eloquently than anything else. "You know, Rhea and I met in 1970. We've been together so long, and you develop together. It's like you always know just how the other person feels. We talk every day." This is not the language of someone who used to love another person. This is the language of one who never stopped. And Rhea appeared on Watch What Happens Live in May of 2019. And Andy Cohen asked her straight blank if she and Danny would ever get divorced. She gave him a look of real perplexity, as if the idea itself was fundamentally wrong. "Why am I? What do you want?" she said. And that was the essence of their weird, stiff relationship. But then, in 2022, she said something, had something to say that resonated widely, that made people stop and think. "Sometimes I wish we were still together, because those were the glory days. But these are other kinds of glory days. Other kinds of glory days." There is a whole philosophy of love, a recognition of evolution, a deep understanding that glory can take many forms, even when the structure of a relationship is changed in a seemingly simple sentence. It speaks to the power to remake not only yourself, but the very idea of being together. Finally, in 2025, Danny DeVito spoke publicly about Fairbanks' sickness as never before. He was not motivated by the lure of gain or fame, but by a strong urge to speak up for children who cannot afford treatment, for the millions of individuals who live in daily misery with no one to speak for them. For years, he had given anonymously, donating more than $12 million for research on bone diseases, never in his own name, never with a news release. He cared far more about the result, about taking away pain, than about praise or plaudits. And now he was being forthright, too, about the Hollywood pressure for decades to conform physically, to consent to procedures to make him more acceptable to audiences. And always, from his hard-scrabble 20s, sleeping in a Volkswagen, to his successful 80s, the answer was the same. I'd rather be a first-rate version of myself than a second-rate version of someone else. That dedication to authenticity, that refusal to compromise his essential self, is a thread that runs through his entire life without a break. The one strong, indestructible thread connecting the numerous moving aspects of his remarkable journey. The contract he burned in defiance. The 19 waterslide takes that broke blood vessels in his eye. The $12 million he contributed discreetly, his name deleted. It all comes back inexorably to a woman who walked into a little theater on a cold January night, her purpose forgotten, her eyes irresistibly drawn to the stocky person on that little stage. She'd seen him, actually seen him, before he had any credentials, before he was famous. She'd chosen him when the world was still busy telling him he was the wrong shape for the body. She would often laugh, a tribute to her bold and rapid comprehension of his energy. I came on to him big time. 2 weeks later, she moved into his flat, and she never really departed in any enduring, basic way. Danny DeVito, at 81, remains a vibrant, dynamic presence. He's still active, working with his son Jake and daughter Lucy on a sports documentary series for Prime Video, a sign of his creative spirit and his focus on family collaboration. He is most recognized for his work as Frank Reynolds on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a show he has been with since it was struggling in 2006, and never left. He was there when they needed him, and he never left. It seems to be a consistent and defining feature of his life. He talks to Rhea every day. They sit at the same table at the restaurant, a wordless ritual of their lifelong bond. They are husband and wife in the legal sense, and in every way that seems to matter most to them. When asked what Rhea Perlman had meant in his life, Danny DeVito answered in the way he frequently answers those things that matter the most to him, with basic, true honesty, with nothing grandiose or poetic. We have 3 beautiful kids, and now we have grandchildren. The family is increasing. We talk every day. No poetry, no grand pronouncement. Simply a man at 81 years old, expressing the structure of his daily existence with the person he's known the longest, in the simplest language he could find. In reality, often the plainest phrase is the truest. Every time in his life, Danny DeVito was told he wasn't enough, that he needed to change, to adapt. He said no. He'd burn contracts. Day after day, he came in fighting some unseen sorrow, and he never said why. He gave quietly and freely, without seeking acclaim. And so had the woman who wandered into a theater one night and knew instantly he was the most fascinating person in the room. Same talk, another house maybe, every single day. Things that don't quit just because they change shape. Some people find each other early on and never quite let go, no matter what the world throws at them. And the rest of the story, as long and hard and odd as it gets, is just what happens in between the discoveries. On January 17, 1970, Danny DeVito met Rhea Perlman. Since then, he has not been able to stop looking for her. And perhaps it raises a question worth asking, not just about them, but about the rest of us. Is staying, even in a way the world doesn't quite recognize as love, sometimes the most honest and profound thing 2 people can do?